you said you grew up in the buildings, right?
Mm.
And you're playing catch with your son, and then you see bunny rabbits, and for you,
Mm.
still, that is something to stop and admire, right?
Hell yeah.
You understand how different life was for you before. Your kids don't, because they didn't have to live through that.
Mm.
Do you find yourself getting upset though that they can't comprehend it?
No.
Not anymore.
Um,
I think the answer is not anymore.
nah, you know what it is? Like the only thing and I'm not in a rush, it's backstage at a show. So Caravana is one of our the best times a year in Toronto. And for those that don't know what it is, it's pretty much like our carnival here. It's like for New York, it's Eastern Parkway, same kind of deal. And yeah, now in LA, they have their carnival thing that they do out there. So for us, Caravana, massive, couple million people in the city, blah blah blah. So I remember there was one Caravana Saturday. I was backstage with one of my guys, and somebody, I respect his parenting, and one of my homeboys for years. You know what I mean? Like, we know each other for decades at this point. Excuse me. And I remember, he said to me, he was like, "Yo, take your son to the neighborhood." And I was like, why would I do that? And he's like, yo, like like you gotta show them, and let them have a certain amount of understanding of what the streets are, and be able to have street sense as well. You know what I mean? You can't super shelter them the whole time. Now, mind you, this is not a street guy at all. You know what I'm saying? Like
I'm
he's
telling
a
you, this is not a street dude.
at all. You know what I mean? He's somebody, I mean, he came from the neighborhood, but
Right,
he's
right.
just like
Oh,
you know what I'm
okay.
saying? Like regular dude. I mean, yeah, he's a, whatever. He's a concert promoter, an event promoter, as well as like, he holds a square job where he works at the bank or whatever. But the point is he's far from that guy. But I remember we had a very interesting conversation, because it's like, for me, somebody that came from the neighborhood has nothing to do with the people in it, but at the same time, it's like, I don't want for my kids to develop a fascination for the neighborhood as well, because the reality of it, like as somebody who's in his 40s looking back, the only reason we were in the neighborhood is because at the time my parents couldn't afford for us to be anywhere else. And when we could, we moved. You know what I'm saying? I think, people have, I think especially within hip hop, we have this what's the word, like
So,
we're
so
fixed we're
romanticize.
we do we romanticize the hood in a certain type of way, but I think a lot of times the people that romanticize the neighborhood are the people that don't necessarily have the options. Because I loved growing up in the neighborhood. Some of my best friends, some of the best times I ever had were in the neighborhood, and shit that I'll always remember. The difference for me is, yo, if somebody said to me, yo, you could grow up, like in a nice house with a backyard, I'm out. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, I'll never forget when I was listening to Mobb Deep, and he said, no matter how much loot I get, I'm staying in the projects space forever. I said, forever?
Forever, ever?
I said, you're never leaving, bro? Like, yo, to me, that was the wildest Mobb Deep lyric I ever heard in my life. I was like, yo, he's gonna have M's and still be in the projects. Like, I thought that, like, we were laughing about that, I think this summer. We had a social distance like thing, like out in the field, in the back of the crib. Like, we have enough space to where we can be out there and outside and everything's cool. But I remember we were laughing about that, because we were like, yo, could you imagine, like, what kind of mentality do you have to say, yo, no matter how much loot I get, I'm staying in the projects space forever. Like, you know what I mean? But I think about that because it's like, yo, whenever I go back and I see, I visit, my guys who are that, honestly, at this point in time, most of the people that grew up in the different neighborhoods that I grew up in across the city, have all moved out of the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're all doing well for themselves, you know what I mean? And most of them have nothing to do with entertainment. They're just, regular working folk. And they moved out of the neighborhoods. And it's like, we're super thankful for that. But it's like, I don't know, maybe you guys have an opinion on it, but it's like, I don't want my kids to be sheltered, but at the same time, I don't want them also unnecessarily to be overthinking, I guess, especially as like young black men. Sometimes it's like, the thought is, I don't want like when they get older, for people to be like, y'all niggas is soft, yo. Kardinal's your dad. You guys grew up, you know what I mean? Like, nice house and whatever, like y'all niggas ain't real. I don't also want them to try and overcompensate, by the time that they're of age and, think that they have to prove to other people, how tough they are, how hard they are, or whatever. Because I mean, for us, the only reason why we had to do that shit in the neighborhood is because we had to. But for my kids, for now, I'm just like, yo, I want to give them the opposite of what I had. I want to give them, the best. I mean, I always say I want to provide everything that they need and some of what they want. That's my goal. You know what I mean?
That's a good quote.
Yeah, I mean, we actually talk about this a lot, like the balance of you want to give your kids that best life possible, but at the same time, you being that where we all kind of come from, you want them to have some kind of street smarts.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a rough world out there. And so that's always, I mean, we're always discussing it. I don't think we ever have the answers for it. Like, how do you give your kids street smarts without them being in the streets? Like, how does that happen?
I don't know, because that's the thing, is it's like, to be completely honest, like, how do you do that? How do you let them understand how the block works without being on the block?
Right.
And I'm not. It's funny, like I had a talk with some of my guys because we're gonna just this collab that I did with some rappers from up here, and we're gonna go shoot something. And it's interesting because they were talking about, we're gonna be shooting in the neighborhood or whatever. And I told them, I'm like, listen, when it comes to me, I'm not one of those, like, I'm super easy when it comes to like, doing collabs or this or that or whatever. We're going to shoot a video. But I told them, I'm like, my only stipulation is I'm not doing anything that will risk me coming back home to my wife and kids. That's it. So I'm like, yo, we could shoot a video, whatever. But like, am I going to the middle of the hood at 11 p.m. to shoot my video just to show that I could do it? I don't give a fuck about none of that shit.
Right.
I'm not doing it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not doing it. And they're like, yo, you know what I mean? Like, you already know we all holding or whatever. I'm like, yo, you guys don't understand. Like, I'm not interested in any of that anymore, bro. Like, I don't care. You know what I mean? Because I had to explain to them. I'm like, yo, my people's hold heat too. But it's like, that's not what I'm about. I care about my kids and my wife more than anything. So if it's something to where, and I told them, I'm like, yo, I'm happy being a square at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like, nothing is doper to me than being a dad. I've never had a doper experience than being able to be a father. So I'm like, yo, you think that I'm going to risk that, you know what I mean, to go shoot a random video that, for dumb shit, but might get shot up, or, you know what I mean? Like, nah, like it doesn't make any sense to me. But having those conversations and those type of experiences just further my point to where I'm just like, I don't know how to give my kids street sense and how to equip them properly. You know what I mean? Because I definitely don't want them to have those experiences that I had growing up, because to be honest, I'm thankful that I made it out of that shit unscathed.
Right.
Not everybody did, as we all know.